Hello and welcome back. This is your favorite history teacher, Coach Bowman, and today we will begin looking into our first unit of the second quarter, which is our classical civilization, starting with ancient India. This presentation is Ancient India Part 1, which looks into the geography and the early beginnings of India. Hopefully, you all have downloaded the notes, the Ancient India Part 1 notes, and are ready to go. So here we go. As always, we start with geography. As we mentioned at the very beginning of the year, the geography, especially the physical geography, plays a major role in everyday life. And in India, it is the same. We look at the physical barriers that protected India, and there are some big ones. We have the Himalayan mountains, which is the largest mountain range in the world. This is where you would find Mount Everest, as you see here on the right. This is in the northeastern part of India. To the northwest, you have the Hindu Kush Mountains, a little bit smaller, but they do provide a physical barrier for the civilization. And this is in the northwest. So in the north, the civilization of India is protected by mountains. And to the southwest, we have the Arabian Sea, directly south, the Indian Ocean, and then to the southeast, the Bay of Bengal. So as you can tell by the difference, in the south, you have protection by large bodies of water. And to the north, you have the physical protection of mountains. So these barriers allow India to become a subcontinent. The subcontinent, if you might be wondering, you might be asking yourself exactly what is the definition, coach, of a subcontinent? Well, glad you asked. Let me get this little window off of here. The definition of a subcontinent is a large landmass that, due to its physical barrier, has developed its own unique culture. And, ladies and gentlemen, that is what India did. Because of these physical barriers, they did develop its own unique culture. So let's take a look at the map that you have. I believe I have uploaded it to your all's note packets. You have the mountains indicated by the brown. You have the bodies of water along the south indicated by the bluish gray color. And you have your rivers, which we'll talk about here in a second. The Indus River to the west and the Ganges to the east. Note the arrow pointing in the direction of how it flows. You also have on here China. You might be wondering, why in the world is China here? Well, this is how large China is. It butts up against the Himalayan mountains, and that mountain range, the Himalayan mountains, separates China from India. So there's a physical barrier right there. One little clue that I have told my students over and over again, if you get confused about the bodies of water around India, you need to think about as I O Bob. That's my little phrase I want you guys to write down somewhere in your note packet. As I O Bob. As Arabian Sea, I O Indian Ocean, and Bob Bay of Bengal. So there's your bodies of water. And the ironic thing is, if you were to fold um, this map, what I like to call hot dog style, meaning have a vertical line going down the middle of it, you would notice that on the left side of that vertical line, you have a mountain range, a river, and a body of water. Likewise, on the right hand side, you have a mountain range, a river, and a body of water. So, kind of get those groupings in your mind. I'm trying to get that mental map set for you, and you should be good to go. So what you have here is a very interesting photograph. This is what is known as the a pass in the mountain range of the Hindu Kush Mountains. And specifically where this green arrow is pointing to is known as the Khyber Pass. This Khyber Pass plays a major role in um, in India's history. It definitely allows the indigenous people to migrate into the river valley system, as well as more aggressive individuals, which we'll take a look at here in this presentation. So, as I mentioned on the map, we have two river valleys, the Indus and the Ganges. Specifically, with the Indus, we're looking at the river that flows out of the Hindu Kush Mountains and into the Arabian Sea. Another characteristic of this river is the fact that this is where the early beginning of the Indian civilization began. And so, if you think back to the rivers of Mesopotamia as well as the Nile River of Egypt, all these rivers do have seasonal flooding, and those floods would bring silt, and that silt allows good, rich topsoil to be deposited on the riverbanks, and in turn allows the people of the Indus Valley to have good, rich farmland. So it makes sense as to why it was the first to develop a civilization for India. Ganges River, civilization does reach there eventually. Again, this river flows out of the Himalayan mountains and into the Bay of Bengal. Now, this river will play a major role in the religion of Hinduism. And I believe it extends to the fact that it does come out of the Himalayan mountains, which is so tall and has a lot of symbolism and spiritual meaning with that. The Indus River Valley civilization is a very fascinating place. There are still being excavations and information, artifacts and fossils being discovered, and a lot of newer information is being learned about this early civilization. But we have two major cities that have been discovered and excavated, and those are Harappa, which can be found high up in the valley, and Mohenjo-Daro, which is low in the valley. That's kind of how I remember that, and try and hopefully have my students remember that as well. Harappa, high up in the valley in the mountains, closer to the mountains, and Mohenjo-Daro is low in the valley, close to the water. Both cities are considered to be farming communities. There's evidence of that there that have been discovered. And we've also discovered artifacts of trade with people from Mesopotamia. The little stone square that you see in the middle here was actually a receipt found in Mesopotamia, and so it indicates that there was a trade route between Mesopotamia and the Indus River Valley civilizations. What characteristics came about from the Indus Valley? Well, they did develop a complex street system. What I mean by that is a city blocks, a grid type system. Excuse me. So you have streets and avenues going one way, and you have roads and avenues going the other. So kind of an interesting concept there. You also start to see sewer systems being developed. You might say, well, that's kind of new, that's kind of modern. Well, it definitely was. And they were way ahead of other civilizations of that time. The benefits of a sewer system is that it allowed people to bathe. It brought water into the city, into the people's homes. It also allowed human waste to be taken away. And from those two major things, they start to see benefits of what we think of as good hygiene, keeping clean, and the benefits of not getting sick. And as we know in this COVID world today, you gotta wash your hands. So the people of the Indus Valley were way ahead of their time. So what happens to the Indus Valley? Well, a group of people known as the Aryans, also known as the Indo-Aryans, come through the Khyber Pass. They migrated from what's called the steppes, which are a region in Iran, and they come through the Khyber Pass into the Indus Valley. As I mentioned earlier, they're a little bit more aggressive. They wanted to show their dominance in the valley, and they conquer the Indus Valley. So, what do they do? How do they show their dominance? Well, what they end up doing, they created something called the caste system. If you think about the cast that one would get when they break their arm, a cast prevents the bones from moving to allow them to heal. So, when we think of the caste system in India, it is there, and people are not allowed to move from their caste that they are placed in. So in this case, the Aryans that came in, they consider themselves higher, better, if you will, than the native people of the Indus Valley. So you might see them called in this presentation non-Aryans or native Indus River Valley people. And in turn, they will be on the lower tiers of the caste system, and the Aryans would be up in the higher classes as well. This is a very interesting concept because what will happen eventually is to prevent mixing and to prevent the population from, if you will, uh, crossing over castes, the Aryans started putting the concept of the caste system into a religious perspective. And so, in doing so, you start to see a blend of the Aryan beliefs and non or native people beliefs. So here's an image of the caste system. As you can see, the little color code there on the right, the top three tiers show the Aryan population, and you have the occupations that they would hold. And then you have the non Aryans, which were the native people, and how they were in the lower tiers. And you can probably imagine that the upper three would have some type of education of some sort, ability to read and write. So, education, you can probably be safe to say, was a predominantly Aryan uh, benefit, if you will. So again, the caste system is created to dominate the Indus population, separating the Aryans and the non-Aryans. So once again, you see how you have the higher castes and the non-Aryans had the lower caste. So some of the concepts about the caste system are that the castes were hereditary. That means whatever your parents were, that is the caste that you were stuck in. And you cannot move up no matter how hard you work, no matter what education, no matter who you married, how much money you make. The phrase I like to use is from the womb to the tomb, from the time you were born to the time you die, you stay in the same caste. So that's something that the Aryans put into play, and it does become something important, especially when it comes into the religion of Hinduism, which will be in our next presentation. So again, the caste system is something that they truly believed in, and they reinforced not only by political laws, but when they bring in religion, it puts in a whole nother aspect of reinforcement, if you will. So what happened to the Indus Valley? Well, after the Indo-Aryans invaded or arrived in the Indus Valley, the culture of the two major cities tend to fade away. There is no indication of natural disasters. We don't see any evidence of fires or earthquakes or wars. So it is still, in essence, a mystery as to what happened to these ancient cities. So it's hopefully soon we can discover, somebody discovers the true happenings as to what happened to those two cities. It'd be a very fascinating story, I'm sure, that will eventually develop. So, what's happening next time, y'all? Well, we're going to look into the religions of India, both Hinduism and Buddhism, and then we will finish up our India unit next week with empires of India. That's the Mauryan and the Gupta empires. So, please feel free to watch us again if you missed some information. hopefully, I didn't go over these things too fast. Um, have a safe week and see you next time.